Welcome back. Few people can have crammed more careers into a few brief years than our next guest. Amid the bustle of running a busy hotel in picturesque Cornwall, he's found time to be seconded to the Ministry of Funny Walks, set out on an expedition to the Holy Land, and to see service as a comic ace in Monty Python's Flying Circus. Yes, you've guessed it. As Anna just said, it's John Cleese. John, we've shared some premieres before, The Frost Report among them, and it's a great pleasure to have you here sharing this one.
Well, it's nice to be here on this relatively historic occasion.
Thinking back to The Frost Report, one of the highlights to me of that first show was your schoolmaster. And I never asked you this, was he based on a real person? That chaotic schoolmaster who replaced Monsieur Boireau,
yes,
Mr. Mboko from Chad.
I'd like to welcome 4 new members to the staff, but unfortunately I could only get 2. Mr. Jones, who is a grammar school man, though none the worse for that, stop laughing, will be taking the middle school and all the footing little subjects that nobody else wants to teach, and I'm sure that he will be an invaluable member of the staff. And in time, valuable. Remember that?
Yes, yes.
Well, I was the guy who actually taught all the footing little subjects that nobody else wanted to teach, but I enjoyed it a lot, but it wasn't that crazy, the school.
But was it short on budget, like the school you created?
A little bit short on budget, but the advantage of my teaching was that I went straight from being a boy in the summer of whenever it was to being a teacher 3 months later. So I knew what it was about. It was about winning the war against the kids.
And Viscount Montgomery came to your speech day at Clifton.
That's right.
And said?
And said, if anyone ever criticises our great country, let's remind them of our war record. Played to, won to, drawn north and lost north.
Lost north. That's perfect for the Clifton song about thundering beneath the twilight goal. That's 15 years ago. What about in Python, that parrot sketch, which I saw time and time again? What on earth inspired that?
Oh, I think just the idea that you couldn't get service anywhere in England. Couldn't get good service, and sort of full stop. And it actually came from Michael Palin's garage owner, from whom Michael bought a car. And you could never get anything out of this man, because Michael would drive the car in, and he'd say, look, I remember I bought this car from you last week, the gearbox is a bit sticky. And he'd say, well, a car of this caliber, Mr. Palin, you'd expect that. I mean, a sticky gearbox, you know, that's a sign of quality. I mean, any trouble with it, bring it in. You see, Michael would say, well, I am having trouble with it, and I have brought it in. He'd say, well, as I say, you know, any trouble, bring it in. And we wrote a garage sketch, and which we actually did in How to Irritate People, which was never shown in this country, which I made for you. And then we decided, when Python started, Graham and I were rummaging around amongst all the old materials, seeing what we could reuse. And we decided that we couldn't do a second-hand car sketch because it was so hackneyed. So we actually decided we'd set it in a pet shop. We'd have this guy coming in and saying, this dog I bought, it doesn't work properly. And then we eventually abandoned dog, and it became a parrot.
Perfect. And what about Basil Fawlty? He was based on real life, wasn't he?
He was based on a guy who ran a hotel in Torquay. And we actually stayed there during some Monty Python filming. And he's still around. I once made the mistake of saying to the press, years afterwards, the name of the hotel that it was based on, which was the Gleneagles in Torquay. He's not there anymore. So if you go to the Gleneagles in Torquay, as people have done, you find an extremely charming, courteous and efficient hotelier. So people are terribly disappointed if they go there nowadays. But the guy actually exists, and I think it was the Daily Mail tracked him down in Miami and kind of told him he was Basil Fawlty. And the daughter actually watched one of the programs and said, oh yes, that's Dad and Mum, all right.
But do you think Fawlty Towers type activity is still happening all over Britain?
Oh, everywhere. I mean, every time I go anywhere, there's simply more material. The only reason that I ever want to do any more is that there's massive... I was staying in the Randolph, Oxford. This is some time ago, and I got in late and I asked them for a 9 o'clock alarm call, and at 4:30 the phone went, you know, and I was fast asleep, and I managed to sort of find the phone and say yes, and they said, Mr. Cleese, this is your 4:30 alarm call. I said, no, it really isn't. I mean, mine is a 9 o'clock, it may well be somebody else's 4:30, but it's not mine, you know, and I put the phone back on, and I just got like that, and just at that nice moment when you're dropping off, the phone goes again, and I said yes, and they said, just to apologise for waking you up.
Anna's fascinated in your expertise on body language.
Yes, well, I'm fascinated by your Ministry of Funny Walks and how you got away with it, really. I mean, laughing at people with a funny walk. And the fact that you did that so wonderfully and people copied you. One saw it done all over the country. I saw it done in a restaurant. Somebody walked out doing your walk.
It kind of fascinated people. I mean, Michael Palin and Terry Jones wrote the sketch. So, and I just performed it. But I don't know why it was so... I never thought it was that funny. In fact, when we were doing the stage show, I didn't want to do it. And we did it at Brighton the first night, and it laid the most terrible egg. I mean, I was so happy. I was up there for 3 minutes on stage. There wasn't a single laugh. And I came off in the wings afterwards and said, see, it isn't funny. And then they made me do it the next night at Bournemouth, and the audience laughed, and then it was in the show for good.
Well, there have been plenty of laughs this morning. Thank you very much indeed, John.